The Arbitrum airdrop may be one of the largest airdrops we've had in crypto history. If you guys didn't get the Arbitrum airdrop, it's okay, don't be salty. In today's video, I'm going to share with you guys some information on how you can take advantage of the situation if you haven't gotten any tokens and how you can get some tokens. Also in today's video, if you want to see if you are eligible, I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can see if you have some tokens to claim. This airdrop will commence in 4 days or about 5 days. It will happen on Thursday. And we'll also talk about some potential price points for the Arbitrum token. So here are the qualifications for the ARB token. Simply just bridging to Arbitrum 1, Arbitrum Nova, some transactions, transaction frequency, yada yada yada. But the weight of the tokens really depends on how many of these checkpoints you got. Each of these individual tasks count as one checkpoint. If you go into the airdrop eligibility in the docs, you can see here this is converting your points to tokens. So if you had less than 3 of any of these checkpoints that you guys see here, so if you simply just bridge to Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova and didn't do any other transactions, said forget it, I'm done, well, you didn't get a ARB token airdrop. But if you did 3, then you get 1,250 tokens. 4, you guys can see the point here. And as for the price of the ARB token, I see this playing out similar to Optimism. I'll show you guys some TVL charts so you guys can see that. But the Optimism circulating token at the time of the drop was about 314 million or 315 million. In the Arbitrum tokens, there's going to be 1.275 billion. So that's about a 4x difference. So that's something to keep in mind, especially for the price of the token. But keep in mind, the TVL is much different. As you can see here, back when the Optimism airdrop dropped, it was around May. And the TVL was around 403 million. Whereas with Arbitrum, after the announcement, it was probably about 1.5 billion. So no, it was probably, yeah, it was like right here. It was about 1.5 billion. So four times the size. So 4 times the size, also 4 times the tokens. And that's why I think it's going to be similar in price on Optimism. How I look at it is like for every $1 in TVL, I see that as $1 on Arbitrum. So if there's $1.6 billion in TVL and there's 1.275 billion tokens, I could see the tokens trading around $1.30, $1.40. Now for the price range that is probably going to have at initial drop is going to be around 75 cents to $1.50. It's probably going to be extremely volatile with people who didn't get the ARB token buying it up and people who did get it selling and taking profits and obviously cashing out. Now as for the airdrop, it's about 13% because there's 1.13% also going to DAOs, and I'll explain that later in this video. But you're probably thinking to yourself, like, if you didn't get the airdrop, Drake, why are you giving me this video? Why am I even watching at this point? Well, that is actually a really good question, right? No, I'm kidding. The DAO treasury, 42.78% of the tokens. So that means that there are some tokens in the treasury that are not given to the team or early investors that have to be spent somewhere. Let's go and look in the docs and see what it says about that. If you see in the governance docs or the constitution of the Arbitrum DAO, you can see here that there is a section that talks about funding. Requests, funds, / grants, or otherwise propose how to spend or allocate funds from the DAO treasury held to the Arbitrum Foundation. TLDR, this means they're going to spend money in order to incentivize on-chain activity and growth of the chain because it benefits the Arbitrum Foundation as well as the Arbitrum DAO holders because they want the thing to grow, similar to Optimism. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at a snapshot of some of the different protocols that are getting the 1% airdrop, but will probably also get additional tokens similar to Optimism. This is a layout. This is from Nansen AI. This is basically an on-chain analytics platform, but this also breaks down the Arbitrum token distribution for different protocols as well as different users. If you want to read this lengthy article, I'll put it in the description below. But the TLDR is we have this pretty picture right here. This breaks down the amount of transactions per DApp, the TVL, and it basically boils down the data and is like, all right, of the Arbitrum ecosystem, GMX takes up 22%, or at least gets 22 percentage points of value for it. It doesn't mean that it has 22% of the TVL. What it really means is like, hey, look, GMX has this many different factors, and we give it a weight of 22% out of 100. Where you also have Treasure DAO and Bridge World. These are basically under Magic, so you can consider that 21%. Then you have Sushi Swap, Uniswap, Hop Protocol, Radiant Capital, Stargate, Layer 0, Layer 0 and Stargate are really basically just the same thing. But you can see this breakdown right here. The reason why this is important to look at this picture, and if you want, you can pause the video and take like a little screenshot. There, my face is out of the way so you can get it. But this is important to take a look because the larger percentage, it's more likely they're going to get more tokens. And when a protocol gets more tokens, most of the time, they will share the love with the users and distribute some of the tokens to their users. And this is how you can get some of the ARB tokens without having to simply buy them. Of course, this is speculation. This is not guaranteed. But there is a chance that the protocols are like, hey, look, we're going to share some tokens with you, and we're going to add additional yield into these pools. So this is what it would look like for something with GMX. You see here you have an APR and it says, hey, look, 12%. 10% in ETH and 1.91% in escrowed GMX. Well, you're looking at it and you're like, this kind of stinks. Like, I would like a higher yield. Well, I could see GMX saying, oh, yeah, you get 10% in ETH, you get 1.91 in escrowed GMX, and then you also get an additional 5, 10%, whatever they want to call it, in the ARB token. And this incentivizes people to get the GMX token. Now, this is where we're going to get into the plays for Arbitrum. Now, me personally, I already have enough exposure to Arbitrum, and I'm not looking to buy a bunch of these tokens and speculate and see what's going to happen. But if you have no exposure to Arbitrum and you're looking at some interesting plays, you can go based on the TVL to market cap ratio and which ones could be potentially front ran to buy a bunch of the tokens, accumulate, and be able to farm with them. As you can see, a lot of people are already front running with Camelot, Zyber Swap, you got Pendle, you got Cap Finance, you got Magic. And if you guys were listening to the DeFi Top Signal podcast, we kind of talked about it a little bit over there. But something you need to keep in mind is the TVL to market cap ratio. And Radiant Finance is one of those that has a pretty low TVL to market cap ratio. The only problem I see with Radiant Finance is short term. It has a lot of inflation, but it could potentially be a good play if this is something you're looking at. And me personally, if I had no exposure and I was getting into a trade this late, I would look for the tokens that haven't pumped as much and ones that have a longer term approach. So of course, the very first one I really like is GMX. And you can see here the TVL is 587 mil, but on Arbitrum, it's actually about 487 mil. And if you compare that to their market cap, the market cap of GMX, the fully diluted, is like, I don't know, 600-700 million. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And that's also why you see GMX price going up exponentially. And there's a lot of these Arbitrum tokens that are doing this in order to front run that opportunity of being able to take advantage and being able to farm some of these additional tokens that will be coming in the form of funding for different protocols. So just taking a look at this little snapshot right here, in my opinion, long-term plays, looking at GMX, Treasure DAO. Treasure DAO is basically the heart of the NFT ecosystem on Arbitrum. It basically started like all the free mints with small brains and whatnot. But this one, in my opinion, this token still has some room to run. Obviously, as long as Bitcoin doesn't nuke. GMX, I see that as a long-term play. I really wouldn't mess with something like the Sushi Swap token or Sushi and the Uni token because, I mean, those are multi-chain. I mean, they may get a distribution, but the token's not really Arbitrum native. I'm looking at the Arbitrum native tokens. So another one would be like Dopex and the RDPX token. Those ones, they have pumped a little bit off of their lows, but they're still around a consolidated price. They aren't at their like all-time highs to where something like Radiant Finance is at its all-time highs. And as you can see here, RDPX kind of came back off of its lows, returning to the mean. Whereas its previous high earlier this year in February 2023 was at 60 bucks. So I do think it still has some legs to run, but keep in mind RDPX is inflationary and it's more of a speculation play with what they're going to be bringing with cents. but they do have something called DPX, which is basically another token of the DopeX ecosystem. And if you haven't used DopeX at all, it's basically a options protocol that allows you to have different strategies. So like straddles, long straddles, short straddles, hedged positions, covered calls, you name it. Another one is Gains Network. You also have Jones DAO. And if you guys were on Discord or if you saw the hint I gave on Twitter, another gem in my opinion is Cap Finance. There is no additional inflation to this token, but take a look at these charts. It's nuts and ham. The volume is crazy. So this thing just cranked in 60 million in daily volume yesterday, but just putting that into perspective and in comparison with something like a GMX at a 600 to 700 mil fully diluted valuation, Cap Finance is only about 32 to 35 million with no additional tokens to be released. GMX has about 400 to 450 million daily average volume. This one about 60 mil. Now, obviously it's less, but it also has a fraction of the market cap. In fact, it's about 20x less. So something to keep on the radar. This one is still a little bit degen, and Cap Finance, they do need to have additional revenue share. As you can see here, most of the fees are actually going to the treasury, and some of the staking fees, it's only 10%, whereas 80% of the fees are going to the treasury, the other 10% to the LPs. So I really think they need to flip on that switch, and then it could cause Cap to go nuts and ham. And of course, as always, time will tell. We'll see what will happen with Cap Finance, but you can see here it's kind of pumping off of its lows and potentially going for a breakout to retest some of the previous highs. And another piece of alpha for Cap.Finance is that it's going to be deploying on Coinbase chain or Base chain. So I think they will have the first mover advantage over there, but as always, we'll see what happens on there. And another one that seems to be getting a lot of love is Camelot token or Grail. This one has already pumped like crazy, so I'm not really looking to get into this. And as I already said, I have enough exposure on the Arbitrum ecosystem. I'm not really looking into these plays. But here are some of the different tokens that you could be looking at that could potentially do something or make additional returns. And you can be using them to farm additional ARB incentives if they do get them, just based on this screenshot here. And there are a couple of VE33 forks on Arbitrum, a new one that just deployed. I shared it on the podcast as well. This is Ramsey's Exchange, RAM. The flywheel seems to be doing well. I wouldn't see this as a play of getting the ARB token. They would probably need to make a proposal, but these guys have fixed the fees compared to Sliz. A lot of people keep asking me about Solid Lizard. Is it dead? What now? Well, Sliz, they either need to fix the fees because the fees are some of the highest on the dexes in Arbitrum, so they are not getting a lot of volume, or they need to pivot to the long tail assets and focus on these assets because they're volatile and they can't use concentrated liquidity and give the best fees and best liquidity like on Uniswap. So for me, the plays that I am looking at Optimism as a potential narrative. I'm looking at Phantom, and I'm also looking back at Kava with the liquidity mining incentive. Most of the liquidity is going into Arbitrum though in order to front run this narrative, so I'm just thinking a couple of steps ahead of time to see what will happen. But of course, I still have exposure to Arbitrum just in case, but I'm just explaining the other narratives I will be looking at in the future. Again, Phantom, Optimism, and of course back on Kava, because most of the eyes have left Kava because, oh, well, ARB just gave it airdrop. Let's go over there and get a bunch of the money. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's hit you with the wisdom one-liner. Proverbs chapter 10, verses 2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. Be good, be righteous. And also, if you guys want to jump in the Discord and get access to exclusive content I don't share on YouTube or on Twitter, you guys can check out that link in the description below. You guys can chat with a bunch of other DeFi degens just like you. And of course, I'm a lot more active there. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.